Let's talk now about the architecture and the setup of RtWebParts, and we'll start by looking at basic IIS and SQL Server. Now, IIS is known as it's also known as Internet Information Services. It's Microsoft's web server software. It's basically the the application layer, the software layer that makes your computer into a web server. So it's part of the Windows 2003 operating system. It is something that comes with the system. Pretty easy to set up, and basically through that IIS you become a web server, and that is one of the foundations of using SharePoint and RtWebParts is you need to be on a web server. There is a management tool called the IIS Snapin. Let's take a look at this real quick. Normally you would get to it by going into Administrative Tools, and let me demonstrate this. I'll choose from within the Start menu. You can't see that there, but under Administrative Tools, I'll choose the option called Internet Information Services, and the other Manager. And then the other thing you can do is just go into just right-click on My Computer. There's an option there called Manage, and within there, you'll see under Services, you'll see the Internet Information Services IIS Manager. So within here, either way you get to it, you can look at the different websites that are running on this particular computer. So let me make this a little bit bigger. We'll take a look at I've currently got 4 websites on here. One of them is not running. Just the basic SharePoint administration website. Here's the website on which, or that we indicated, is our website for running RtWebParts. You can see the RtWebParts resources have been installed here. So if you, for example, if you were to right mouse click on this and look at its properties, there's all kinds of useful information you can find in here about this website. For example, under Home Directory, you can see the actual physical location of this website. That's where you're going to find all the files that make up this website. And then, of course, you can also find things like the security settings are set here. This is where you can go in and configure security and whatnot. You can also find where the error logs are located. So, for example, let's go back to here's the main website tab. Under this properties right here, you can see that this is the directory in which your log files are going to be for IIS. So sometimes when you're troubleshooting, you may find the need to go in here, and let me just show you where this is. I'll go ahead and paste that here. And this is where you'll find the log files that are associated with IIS. This is a current log file. We can go in there if we're trying to track down IIS or web server problems. Again, so things like security, the different performance options you have, performance metrics, or the performance choices you can make. These are all things that you can do from here. Now, I do want to point out that SharePoint is an application that runs on IIS, but you'll notice all the files are stored not in IIS, but it's actually stored in SQL Server. So Microsoft's relational database, SQL Server, is the repository for all the files that are required for SharePoint. So this is news to some people, but that's that's one of the attributes of SharePoint. The versions of SharePoint or the versions of SQL Server that are required are really quite flexible. Just about any version of SQL Server, including the free versions, the SQL Express, or we used to be called MSDE. We do recommend, though, and Microsoft recommends going to the full licensed version of SQL Server, just for better support and whatnot, better performance. But yeah, SharePoint does require that. That's something you're going to notice about working within SharePoint. And just so you know, minor technical trivia, really, there's an Internet Service API that is actually what's redirecting all of the requests that are being handled by SharePoint out to SQL Server. So that's something you may see pop up in error messages from time to time, IIS API. Now, one of the common troubleshooting tips that you may hear when you're talking to tech support, or you may read in our documentation, is to do a reset of Internet Information Server. There are three ways you can do that. You can stop and restart IIS, your specific website, or all of IIS using that manager. So again, if I go back and I take a look at let's take a look at our computer manager here. Let's get out of properties. There we go. Yeah, these are the different websites. As you can see, you can stop and restart individual websites. You can stop and restart IIS in general. And so these are some of the two of the ways that you can stop and restart IIS. But by far, the most common method is when we simply recommend you do an IIS reset. And by IIS reset, what we mean is, well, you simply run that command from the command prompt. So I'm going to open up a command prompt window, and from anywhere within the command prompt window, I can type in IIS reset. That's going to go ahead and stop my web server, restart the web server, and that is something that it's a common troubleshooting tool when we see things have gotten unresponsive. Sometimes we'll be recommending you do that. As you do this reset, if you do see any errors that are generated, you'll see those in the logs, and you'll also see the errors that will show up here at the command prompt. Now, as I mentioned before, it's SQL Server that is used by SharePoint as the storage mechanism, or the storage media for all those files that are required by SharePoint, therefore the files required by RtWebParts. So as I said, the different versions that are available, even the SQL Express or the MSDE, are available. It is a separate license from RtWebParts, so you'll have to contact Microsoft if you're interested in using SharePoint and SQL Server. Now the SQL Server Express, as I said, it is included with the SharePoint license. It's actually part of, you'll find this in Windows Server 2003. And there are earlier versions, operating systems that included the MSDE free version. In any event, those are free versions that we do recommend you upgrade to the licensed versions for performance and support reasons.